Welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I am getting to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our community. What did they do to get started, and what are they doing to stay there, to stay in that leadership lane? And today, oh my goodness, I have another special guest. Her name is Carol Kiburz. She is the Vice President of Human Resources at Acme Brick. She is certified with her SPHR and her SHRM-SCP. And I am so excited to have you on the show today. Hey, Carol.
Hey, Bruce, it's so good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's so good to see you. And we were talking before we started recording. It's been so long. I was actually thinking about the last time I saw you. I believe it was at the HR Southwest conference. I think Deborah Bell might have been over there.
Yes,
you
you're
remember that?
right. Yes, out in the vendor area. That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, Deborah, she is absolutely fantastic. So, oh man, I'm so excited to talk leadership with you today and all things HR. And I want to just as we get started, I would love to hear you share just a brief highlight about your organization, Acme Brick, and how do you serve your customers?
Well, we serve our customers. We're Acme Brick Tile and Stone. We've been in business for 130 years, so that is phenomenal. We serve our customers by manufacturing and selling our own brick, as well as other building products. We sell natural and manufactured stone, flooring, other siding materials. We sell masonry supplies. So we operate in 13 states. We have 85 locations, brick and block plants, as well as sales locations throughout the South Central and Southeastern United States. We're headquartered in Fort Worth, and our closest sales office is in Euless, Texas.
Wow, 130 years. That is absolutely fantastic.
Yes. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's such a neat tradition, and obviously we're good at making brick and we're good at selling brick. And the people here are so authentic. When people ask me, why do you like working at Acme Brick? It's all about the people. They're just authentic. They care about each other. We care about our customers. So I love that. But with that legacy, I arrived 3 years ago. There was a culture of not entrenchment, but so successful in doing what you're doing, why change? So I came with ideas and had to reasonably make business cases for why we should do some things a little differently. It was very well received, and we've just been on the journey ever since then.
I love that. I love how you shared that about the business case. I actually have done some presentations around influence, in particular, influencing the C-suite. And one of the things I talk about, and we had some questions we're gonna get into, but when you said that, it just made me think about this, how to influence the process, of course, you have to, start by building trust, right? Building these relationships. But then once you get in there and kind of define that problem, you got to build a business case to really create influence. Would you agree with that?
I agree completely. And I think also, Bruce, for me, it's been knowing my fellow officers, knowing how they think. My CEO, who's a terrific person, Dennis Knauts, he was the former CFO. And he was a CPA and he's an MBA. He's a very analytical person, as is our EVP. So I knew I had to come with spreadsheets and a strong business case. Our sales guys, however, you have to speak from the heart more and show why something is good for our people and how it will benefit our people. So I've found it best to kind of know your audience, know what you need to do and why. And I've presented things from a business case, multifaceted business case perspective.
Oh man, this is so good. Hey, all of our listeners out there right now, get your pen, get out your notepad. There is going to be some great information on this show. And I love that. Hey, Carol, I want to really kick this thing off. I would love for you to share your story, share the Carol Kiburz story. How did where did you grow up and how in the world did you get into HR and leadership?
Yeah, so it's kind of a little unique. I grew up in Houston and love the Houston community. It's so diverse and international and so friendly. So that was just a great privilege to grow up there. But I decided in high school that I wanted to be in technology. So I went to Texas A&M, and my bachelor's degree is in computer science. So I did technology for the first half of my career. I started as a coder and project manager and then did larger projects. I ended up, my last tech career was as an employee was with PeopleSoft. I was a PeopleSoft technical expert. Then I became a PeopleSoft consultant and landed a giant implementation at Associates First Capital, which now is owned by Citigroup. And we did a huge, very successful HCM implementation. And in doing that, I learned a lot about HR business processes, HR payroll benefits, policy, and I really loved the people. We had so much fun back when you can have parties. We'd have parties and do all sorts of fun stuff. I'm like, wow, these people are so much fun. Not that tech people aren't fun, but HR people are really fun, as we know people like Bruce, right? I was surrounded with people like Bruce. So along the way, a VP of international HR there, we got to know each other, became friends. And one day he turned to me and he said, you should go into HR. And I said, well, what? I'm in technology. He's like, no, really, you should go into HR. I said, well, I'm not qualified. He said, it doesn't matter, you can learn. So he planted a seed and I started thinking over time, wow, that would be interesting because this is a whole new area. There's so much more for me to learn. Not that there wasn't more for me to learn in technology, but once you've done multiple implementations, you've kind of been there and done that. We kind of parted ways. He became the head of HR at Turner Construction. His name is Petals, and he's a terrific human, and we're still in touch now. And a year into that, he called me and he said, we have a director of technology job. I want you to come work here at Turner. It was a great job. I accepted, went to work at Turner, started supporting him and his whole HR team again with all the fun people, right? And all the aspect of the business I loved. A year into that, his corporate director of HR job came available and he offered it to me. And again, I said, I'm really not qualified. He said, you will learn, you will become qualified. So I said yes. And then knowing I'm not qualified, I think the best play there, and it had a corporate team reporting to it, but also a leadership of support and guidance to 70 individuals out in all the Turner business units. These were HR directors, managers, and admins, and a lot of them were more experienced than me. So I just had a call with them and I said, I've accepted this job. I'm not fully qualified. Please mentor me. And they did. So it was the most amazing employment experience. And then along the way, I started studying my SHRM information and achieved my SPHR. And that helped me build my knowledge and just went to a lot of, listened to a lot of podcasts, went to HR Southwest, SHRM National, just learned from my colleagues. So I've been in HR ever since. But having that tech background, it's a little unique, but it's really helpful because I can quickly understand if we're looking at, say, a process or a business need. I can bring to the table this technology background to determine whether or not would technology be an enabler here, or would it be an impediment? Will it help us? Will it slow us down? Would it be something that our employees could understand, or would it simply be confusing to them? So that's been infinitely helpful to me in my career.
Yeah, that's interesting. Number one, the technology background. Little did you know in high school when you had this passion for technology, how it would help you for today. And I've talked to other HR leaders, and you don't realize like that path, that you're on, how that was just setting you up for today. And now because technology, it's really good in some ways, and other ways it can be really draining too, can't it?
Yes, you can lose a lot of energy in technology if you're not careful. When I first joined the company, my colleague, she's the head of IT, and she's like, well, so we're going to implement a real HCM now, aren't we? And I said, well, no, because I used to do that. And number one, I don't have the talent on my team right now that can help. And number two, there are so many more important initiatives and other low-hanging fruit that we need to achieve before we invest 1.5 years in nearly my entire team in an implementation. So she was very respectful of that. And in the meantime, we've been doing all of these different things that have added value. And probably in the next few months, we'll start looking to do a fit gap assessment for what we need, and then start looking at vendors to do an HCM implementation. So
yeah, that's fantastic. because of your experience, you knew that, hey, this is going to take some time, and we have some other priorities over here that we can tackle first. I love that. Hey, I want to ask you about this, about mentors in particular, because you had mentioned this VP of International. He said you should go into HR. And I always like to ask my guests, like, who are some mentors that helped you? And What was it about them? And in particular, I would love to know, what do you think it was that this VP of International saw where they said, hey, you should go into internet or into HR?
You know, it's hard to say. That's such an interesting question. I don't know exactly what he saw. I think he saw that I could, my guess would be, he saw that I really loved people and I could learn quickly and I already had a strong foundation. I'm guessing, I've never asked him. So he mentored me and I am infinitely grateful to that, because I possibly wouldn't be in HR without him thinking to say something. And so I'm appreciative for that mentorship, but that also taught me to look for the gold in other human beings, right? And ever since that point in time, when I bump into people and we're just talking and they start sharing about themselves and I learn what they do. And if you see that a special talent in someone, I think it's so great when we can each surface that and say, wow, you seem really good at this, or you seem to have an innate ability in this area. And have you ever considered developing that further, or changing your focus, or going into a completely different career? I think that's one of my greatest takeaways from him. And I try to do that personally and professionally. Other mentors are I read a lot of books. So there've been, you know, John Doerr, Measure What Matters, you know, Bill Gates' new book on climate. My latest, most favorite book is Hubert Joly. He's the former CEO of Best Buy, and he wrote a book called The Heart of Business. And it's brilliant if you're into, and it has really a kind of a flavor of conscious capitalism, but it's so much more profound how he entered Best Buy and how he turned around that company with the focus on the business, but also an intense focus on the human beings and their customers. It's genius. So that's been, I guess, my latest mentor.
I love that. You know, many authors don't realize how many people they are mentoring. I share all the time. I'm a big fan of like John Maxwell. A little less realize he has helped me in my career. I will put a link to some of those books in the show notes so people can definitely check those out. Oh, I love that. Hey, I want to ask you this. And by the way, I just wrote down, look for the gold in other human beings. That is brilliant. I love that. Hey, let me ask you this. So, you know, when you started out in technology, then you just kept learning. You became a student of the game. You kept growing into the role you're in today. I always like to ask, like, when was there a moment when you found, I always like to use the term find your lane, when you found your lane or your purpose or your calling in your career?
I think that would be at Turner when I stepped into that HR role. And once I got kind of oriented and my legs underneath me and my team and I started mobilizing, I realized, wow, if you make the right leadership decisions and have the right team by your side, you can dramatically help and drive the business and dramatically help your people. That's when I realized that's the importance of leadership. And that's when I moved into my leadership lane. I had led technology initiatives, and that was important, enabling the business, saving the company money. But at Turner, I really moved into my leadership lane and have continued that ever since, and most specifically here at Acme.
Yeah, no, that's great. Hey, I want to ask you about a comment you just made, and you said when you were surrounded by the right team, and it made me think, you know, when it comes to surrounded by the right team, like for the listeners, like what does the right team look like? Is there like a high performing team? Are there some common threads that you see with the right team?
I think in my opinion, the right team, you really need to define the purpose of your team, and then find people whose skills and abilities and interests and heart align with that purpose, right? So if your purpose is highly transactional, and say if you're an accounting group and your purpose is to process transactions quickly and effectively and without error, you want to look for people that probably don't need a lot of human contact, right? And are very efficient and effective and don't make many mistakes. So that's, and who they thrive in that environment, right? So, but my team here, we had a lot of work we needed to do. And so I've looked for people who have a heart for service,
Hmm.
truly care about others, bring expertise in the role. We're changing a lot. My team has been one to lead change. So they have to be able to lead change, communicate change, operate in ambiguity, right? So that's important. Some people don't thrive in ambiguity, others do. So my mind thought is you have to kind of define your purpose as a company and as a group and build your team around that, and find the right people that you'd be putting them in a position of being successful, not a position of being unsuccessful.
Yeah, that is so good. I appreciate you sharing that. Speaking of, we're here, we are in 2021. We are taping in August. This is going to play, I think the third week of September. And, I would just like to ask you in 2020, you mentioned just now operating in ambiguity. I just think that was just like so timely for this. Like,
Yeah.
I want to ask you this question. And of course, here we are trying to figure out how to navigate through this pandemic. I think we're doing a better job of it. Let me ask you, have you changed in your leadership approach in the last, 18 months?
I think definitely I've grown dramatically, because when COVID started, my CEO tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "This is now your job." And I don't have an employee health background. I'm like, whoa, okay. So I had to figure out, okay, how do you do this job? If your job is leading and guiding an entire company through a pandemic, which I had no experience in, how do you do that? So quickly studied and read and thought, and I thought, okay, there's a couple things we need to do. Number one, we need to have a single source of truth from which we make our decisions. What is that going to be, right? Is that going to be a news media outlet? What is it going to be? We decided that the best decision was the CDC. So we are going to follow and track the CDC's guidance. And we all see guidance comes from everywhere, and including the World Health Organization. But we chose CDC as our single source of truth. From a guidance and a risk mitigation perspective, we did not want to put ourselves, I didn't want to put us in a decision of making subjective decisions. Do we think we should unmask? How do we feel about this? That was not going to happen. So single source of truth. The second that I think we realized quickly was, as an officer group, it is best for us to collaborate, listen to each other's opinions, educate and inform each other, and make collaborative decisions in light of data and science. And that wasn't always easy. I mean, we were having meetings, early morning meetings all the time, putting together our guidance to roll out, keeping in mind that we have people in brick plants in close contact all the time. They have to be on the line. Sales offices, what are we going to do there? Are we going to keep our showrooms open? We had to make all of these decisions collaboratively, and we did that. And then I think the third thing I learned was the importance of grace in these situations. So we're all at work trying to do this and navigate through this and listen to each other. Meanwhile, we know that in a sales office or in a plant, something could be erupting. In someone's house, someone's child could be ill, their spouse could be ill. They could be ill, they could have COVID. They might be waiting for a test. Their mother might be in the hospital. A family member might have died. And so just giving each other grace. And while we might not always agree on everything, just having the respect for other people as much as you can muster in light of the circumstance.
That is, I really appreciate you sharing that. I wrote down, I love how you started off. We need a single source of truth, because there's information coming from everywhere. And then of course, collaborate, listen, and educate. And then of course, the grace. That I love that. I love that. That's going to help a lot of people that are listening today. Hey, let me ask you this. You wear a lot of hats. You wear a lot of hats in HR. What do you enjoy most in serving the HR?
What I enjoy the most, what is most intrinsically meaningful to me, is the fact that we can do things, make decisions that impact positively our people, that can help them lead a better life, help them and their families, help them thrive. For example, it can be small things. When I first joined, we're big on recognizing service because
Okay.
we've been in business for so long, and a lot of our people have 25, 30 years of service. We have someone who just celebrated their 60th year of service.
Wow.
She's amazing, right? So, and we go and we travel for service awards, and we give them a neat shirt that has their years of service on it, but we were giving them lapel pins, right? Well, our workers don't wear lapel pins. They don't wear business suits. So I built the business case to say, hey, let's give them catalogs and they can pick their own merchandise. They can have agency to get what they want. That was a big change for us, but it's so sweet, little things like that. Listening, we're now doing Zoom service awards and seeing these associates come on camera and they're like, yes. And with my catalog, I got a fishing rod and I just went fishing last weekend. And another guy last week said he got a generator. I mean, it's just little things like that. That makes me happy. It also makes me happy. We've improved benefits. We're improving pay, things that can change someone's life. We've launched financial wellness, and people have told me we launched Dave Ramsey's Smart Dollar program as well as other 401k stuff. They're like, you've helped transform my financial life. You've helped us save ourselves. We just launched mental wellness, and I am convinced leaders have told me we're going to save lives with this. We're next launching physical wellness, launching those big things. I couldn't think of a better job for me than touching lives in small and in big ways.
Oh my gosh, I am getting chills here. This is so good. I love all these different programs and all the change that is happening that is benefiting your team members. But I want to ask you this. I want to go back to, talked about building that business case right at the start of the conversation. For someone that's listening right now, how do you go about building a business case? Because, and how long does it take? And talk through that process to help our listeners.
Sure. So some of it is hard data. So like the business case for the catalogs, I showed how much money we're spending on the pins. And it was more than you'd think, right? So they have semi-precious stones and metal. And so I kind of built a financial business case. And then I also, because some of our leaders are data centric, I showed other companies that have already done this. And then from the people side, I just showed stories of how meaningful this is to people that I got from our vendor. We use Halo. So I kind of built that multifaceted business case. From a wellness perspective, I extracted all the data showing how many people are and are not participating in our 401k, right? And we need to help them. How many people are taking out loans from the 401k? That was data. And then also showed, look at these programs, the Dave Ramsey programs, see the data he cites about how they've been able to help people get out of debt. And at our rates of pay, we have many hourly workers. They need a tool like this, right? So I kind of try to show every aspect of it. Mental wellness was a little squishier, right? We didn't have a lot of data, but I think if you look at some of the mental health data you can get, and if you could point to industry statistics and statistics in the United States, just look at the rising suicide rate, right? And with the pandemic, look at mental health data. You can make a compelling case from a mental health perspective and say, this is happening in our workforce. You might not see it, but you have to believe it is out there. We have to do something about it. And with this very modest investment, we can do something about it. So let's do that. So that's how I've approached it.
I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. And I know that there's some listeners out there taking notes as we speak. I love how you brought up the mental health. I think that is certainly right at the top when it comes to topics right now. As a matter of fact, I'll be at SHRM National in September, and Michael Phelps, the decorated swimmer.
Yes, he's there.
Is going to be there. So I'm very anxious to hear what he has to say. But I also want to say, I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan. I've been through Financial Peace University. It has changed my path. And so when I hear you share that you have implemented that, I'm like, you're changing lives. I just absolutely love that.
Good. Yes, I feel that. And I'm glad you think highly of the program as well. That's good for me to hear. Yeah, it's solid. So we've made it available to our people in online, or we'll send them his buck, if they're not online.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you a question. But what drives you?
Yeah. Well, I think what drives me is I just have this strong drive to help people in small and large ways. And that's what gets me up in the morning when I'm talking to people. That's what's in my heart. And, you know, every day at work, that's what I'm bringing to work. Fortunately, with my tech background, and then I got an MBA, and a little late in my career in 2015, I got my MBA. That's provided me with a full complement of tools. Like, it's one thing to have a heart for serving others, but you've got to propel change, right? You've got to not just drive yourself, you have to drive other people and get other people to take action as well. And so I'm so fortunate to be in the position to have some of these tools and have a team that can help and provide the information needed to help the people at my company.
Yeah, that is so good. And, you know, I was reading actually on LinkedIn. I love, before I interview guests, I get to see what people are saying in the LinkedIn recommendations.
Mhm.
And there was a lot around that, around just the way you help people and change. But one thing I want to ask you is, or make a comment, and that is, change, it doesn't just like happen, does it? I mean, it takes time, lots of relationship building. I'm pretty sure you don't sit in your office all day, that you're walking through the halls, you're talking to people, right?
Yes, I mean, you've hit the head on the nail, Bruce, I think, and you're so smart anyway, but that the relationship component, having a relationship of trust,
Mm,
bringing that where someone knows that you wouldn't recommend something unless it was well-founded.
yeah.
I think, and also knowing how much change can be tolerated, right? And what kind of change might be tolerated. I have walked into my share of walls. Not every change initiative I've proposed has been successful, but I prefer to fail forward and fail fast than not try. And I will go to bat for something that I think is the right thing to do and do my best. And it might not get approved. They haven't always gotten approved. Having said that, I think sometimes you might propose something and it doesn't get approved initially, but a little time might pass.
Mm,
And then those people have had time to synthesize it, it's percolated, and they become more aware of it and start seeing it maybe more in media. And then when you bring it back up, they say yes. So that has happened as well. So I'm persistent. I've also learned, like with my CEO, I'll give him a heads up. I'll say, well, you know, I've been thinking about this lately, and I think it's something we really need to do, and why. But I just wanted to plant a seed, and I'll get the data together and put together the business case, but we'll talk about it later. And he's like, oh gosh, you know, oh no, here it comes. I'm like, yeah, but here's the heads up. So kind of planting seeds with people in advance, maybe having for big things pre-conversations before you get in that meeting, that can help as well.
I love that. Two things I wrote down. Number one, you have to be persistent, right? If you really believe it can make change, you have to be persistent. But another thing that I'm actually getting ready to publish my book, Life in the Leadership Lane. And
Oh, good.
yeah, so I'm so excited about this. And one of the things I talk about is the 5 different things to drive influence. And that is, I mentioned earlier, first is building trust. Second is you have to find a problem, right? And the third thing is you have to build a business case. Fourth is you have to develop sponsors in the organization, right? Build these relationships. And the fifth thing is being persistent. So everything you're saying, I'm like, okay, good. But one of the things that someone had said that I really love is when you talk to your CEO, hey, I've been thinking about this. He called it drip campaigns.
Yeah, planting drip campaigns or planting a seed, marketing drip campaigns, planting a seed. Yes. Yes. And then hopefully that seed will grow. Well, I'm so excited you're writing a book.
Yeah.
When will it be out?
Yes, it's actually supposed to publish October 1st.
Okay.
And I just absolutely cannot wait. So a couple of weeks after this show, it will be out. Good. And it's around my purpose. And my purpose is to move leaders to inspire and change the workplace. And and basically what I've done is I'm taking the last 2 years of Life in the Leadership Lane, all the different interviews, talking to different people, and really just sharing that with business leaders. And hopefully it will help someone.
What an amazing resource. Boom. That's already at the top of my list when it comes out. So I'm
Oh,
excited
thank
to
you so
read it.
much. I appreciate you
Excited to read it.
so much. Oh, that's fantastic. Hey, let me ask you a question. And this is just something I just saw this and I was just wondering your thoughts around, I'm just going to say fact or myth. And that is, I keep hearing the topic, the great resignation. Do you think that is, there's any truth to that? Like, it sounds like to me, you're doing all of the things, all the right things to make sure that, people are, getting what they need in the workplace.
Mhm. Do you mean you're hearing that a lot of the great resignation, that a lot of people are resigning, or that people are kind of giving up internally?
I think what I'm hearing is that people are just saying, hey, you know what? I'm either working so many hours because I'm at home now doing remote work, or I'm, there's other companies that are offering different. It's just people just seem to be, I think it's twofold. I think number one, people are like just tired. And then number two, people are just saying, you know what, I'm gonna try a different company. But when I saw that, I didn't really, I felt like it was more of the companies that are doing the things that Acme Brick is doing, companies that are just very dialed in on people are doing great. It's the companies that may not be as focused on that.
I agree with what you've just said, kind of how companies are handling the pandemic and events, of the last year and a half.
Yeah.
Can drive the employee value proposition. I don't see really a great resignation. What I see more of happening around the world, but I get most of the news I consume is US because we have a domestic footprint.
Okay.
What I see is really, I would call it almost the great reevaluation, where people are taking a step back in their life, and everyone's been more or less impacted by Black Lives Matter, by the pandemic, by whatever it is. And some people are spending a lot of time in introspection, others not so much, whatever people want to do. And those that are examining that are saying, is my life what I want it to be? Right? Is my job what I want it to be? Are my relationships what I want them to be? If I am blessed with children, am I the parent I want to be? Do we live where we want to live? And I think that is causing some people to ask for a different role at their company, or to step out of the workforce altogether if they can afford to do so, or to realize that this job isn't where my heart is, I'm going to work for a different company. I am seeing that happen. We have not lost that many people. We've had more difficulty hiring. We've lost some people. Some of our work is manual labor. It's challenging, and some people could make more money on unemployment than they could working for us. So some people did leave us, but we hope to get them back. But I do think, some people worldwide, and this isn't a bad thing, because we know as HR professionals, unless you're truly engaged in what you're doing, you're not going to be a peak performer. And your company, unless the workers are not truly engaged, your company is not going to serve its mission and its customers as best as it can. So I think it's one of the crazy good outcomes of the last 18 months for people to do that introspection and make changes if they feel they're needed.
That is great insight. I just wrote down the great reevaluation, and I'm going to use that because I think you are absolutely spot on when it comes to that. People are just taking the time to reflect, saying, not just about my job, but my life. Like, is it where I want to be?
Yeah.
Am I doing all the things I want to do? Is this allowing me to get to where I want to go? And I think that's good. It's good to reflect on who you want to be as a person, right?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh, that is so fantastic. Hey, I want to ask you one quick question before we pivot to another area, and that is for anyone that's listening. I always like to pull something from leaders that are making a difference. Someone listening says, "Hey, I want to be a VP of HR one day." Maybe they're an entry level, maybe they're manager level, maybe they're a director. Any tips that you would share, maybe something you did that might help them continue on that path?
Yeah. I think what comes to mind for me if someone wants to grow their career in HR is Number one, always be learning, just continuous learning and development. And that is in HR, but also all dimensions of business. To be a true effective HR leader, you have to understand the business first, right? So it can't just be HR expertise. So however you can avail yourself of learning opportunities, do that. Secondly, seek leadership opportunities. You can ask for it at work, but if it's not available at work, seek to lead elsewhere. Look at Bruce, look at everything you lead in your job. You're leading us all through this world of leadership. And now you're going to publish a book. I mean, look at all the opportunities you've had to lead apart from your job, right? More junior people can find those leadership opportunities as well with nonprofits. Just raise your hand and say, hey, I think maybe we could do this, and I'm happy to lead that. Leadership is leadership. There's many lessons to be learned, even if they're not at work. And then I guess my final thought is always be looking down the road. Like, you know, here's the pandemic. Once we got our arms around, okay, how are we going to operate in the pandemic? I started looking down the road, and I knew the road was the variants. So even before people were really talking about variants, I knew it was all about the variants from the pandemic. And even now we're talking about Delta. Well, there's a Lambda and 5 others that are out there. Beyond the variants, what could that be, right? So extend your mind thought beyond the here and now and what you're currently doing to what could be next, and have an open heart and mind. And what that might be might not resonate well with you. It might be scary. It might be something you don't like to think about. But whatever that is, I always try to look down the road. That's kind of,
that is so fantastic, Carol. I love that. Always be learning. And I remember taking my HR certification, Barbara Hoover, the great Barbara Hoover. The very first thing she said is, you got to know the business. Like, I was that stuck with me on day one. I was like, yeah, we need to know the business. And then of course, seeking leadership positions. There are all sorts of volunteer opportunities. I was honored to be, a volunteer in Dallas HR. Today I serve Texas SHRM, and then always be looking down the road. This has been so good. I appreciate that. Hey, I want to ask you a question. You talking about leading your team. I want to talk about leading Carol. And I want to ask, is there something, do you have a daily practice, something you do every day that helps keep you on track as a leader?
Yeah, I think a couple things, and thank you. And this is a work in progress, because managing me, and I think for all of us, it's kind of crazy because I have high idea generation. But I think I've learned 2 big things, other than, getting your sleep and trying to eat right and exercise.
Yeah, right.
I think 2 things I've really learned to do in the last 2 years. One is to eliminate a lot of clutter in your life and not multitask. And I was a habitual multitasker. I mean, I'm a reforming multitasker. And I went to a meeting a couple of years ago, and they had a scientist there, and he talked about it. There's no such thing as multitasking. And I'm like, really? Wow, another learning for me. And he went through why you just can't be effective if you're multitasking. And he convinced me. So I still have to curb that urge now, but I've tried to not multitask and have a singular focus. The other thing I've worked hard to do is surround myself with positive people. So I try to be a positive, affirming person who wants to make a difference in the world. And my tribe, my best girlfriends, they are all like that. And I've had friends that weren't necessarily like that, and I'm still friends with them, but I don't seek to spend a lot of time with them. And my job here now, our leadership team is very positive. I just love it. My team is positive. I try to raise my children to be positive people who want to make a difference in the world. So, and I try to limit, if there's social media, I want to learn, I want to seek the truth. But if there's social media, if there's movies, if there's whatever that does not have that at its core, if it's not instructive, if there's no really good reason for me to consume that and bring that into my heart and mind, I don't. So really those 2 things.
Yeah, that is so good. Oh man, eliminate the clutter. And you hit the nail on the head. I tell people all the time, one of my biggest challenges in leadership is leading myself.
Yes.
Goodness, are you kidding me? That's great. And then of course, surrounded by positive people. I mean, I love being around positive people. And that's why I like being around you, Carol.
Yes.
Hey, let me ask you this, and you've given some incredible advice today. But I want to ask you: have you ever been given any advice? Hey, when you were growing up, maybe in your early jobs, or even in your where you're at now, any advice that you just find yourself always sharing with others?
I think the advice, and it's come from multiple sources. So I was kind of raised to be a rule follower, right? To
Mm,
just be, and that classic, it is a gender thing, be a good girl, right? And being a good human, I think, is exceedingly important, but always following rules and following older rules, that is not always the way to lead,
mm,
right? So advice that has been given to me and that I've developed a mind thought in myself
mhm,
is I want to always operate from a position of trying to do the right thing
mm.
for myself and for my fellow humans, right? To operate with integrity and do the right thing, not just for me, but for other people. And sometimes, as we know, look at our history of the United States, there were
Yeah,
rules and things in place that weren't right.
yeah,
And it took people and to verbalize that that's not right. We need to do something different. So that's something that I really work hard at now to, and sometimes it's being the voice in the wilderness to say, that's not right. That's not operating with integrity. We have to make a different decision, even if it costs us more money, right? Even if it takes me more time, even if nobody sees, I see and I know. So that's really the biggest lesson that I've learned that I try to share with those around me and to try to operate from.
yeah. That's fantastic. You know, we have our we call them our DNA elements, our core values, and one of those core values is around integrity. And I just had just last week. I had, of course, in moving, most moves go very well, but every once in a while you'll get one that goes off track. And I remember having the conversation, and we both looked at each other and just said, we need to do the right thing here. That's in our values. And I love that because our company and the people we talk to, we are all shaking our heads saying, do the right thing, right? There isn't
Yeah,
someone saying, no, we need to, look at costs or whatever. We just do the right thing. So with you
good,
sharing that, it really reminded me of that. And I appreciate you sharing that.
good,
Yeah.
good, and good
Yeah.
for y'all.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Oh my goodness. I told you the time is going to fly by.
Mhm.
And now we're going to go into a segment I like to call It's Time to Accelerate. And I just want to ask you a few fun questions. I know you've mentioned some books already. And would you rather read a book or would you rather listen to a podcast? Do you have a preference?
I do both. And it depends on what I'm doing, trying to minimize multitasking, but so
Yes. Don't read a book and listen to a
yes.
podcast at the
All
same
right.
time.
Well, so when I usually read books before I go to sleep at night,
Yeah.
and on the weekends when I have more time. So then I'm reading books, sometimes paper books, but a lot of times electronic books. That's when I have time to immerse. But when I'm driving in my car, or if I'm working in the garden or walking my dogs, listen to podcasts all the time or news reports. So it is multitasking, but to walk your dog doesn't require a lot of intellectual investment or to rip weeds out of your garden.
Yeah.
So I like both equally, and I employ them at the best juncture, I guess, depending on what I'm doing.
I love that. The only thing for me, so I listen to a lot of podcasts, and especially when I'm running. The only thing I don't like about this, I'm a note taker, and so I
Oh,
have to like stop while I'm running
you're
or get in
jogging,
my
you're like,
notes. Put that down. I got to catch that.
you're
So
trying to leave recordings on your phone. That's hysterical while you're running.
yes, yes.
You're panting and
Oh my goodness. Oh, I love it. Hey, let me ask you. You mentioned gardening. You do some gardening. I love that. So I would love to ask you this question, like what energizes you? That sounds like one of the things that might energize you.
yeah, I think apart from helping people, what energizes me, I love, physical activity just makes me feel so good. So I love to walk and run, and I'm a swimmer and do stuff at the gym. But there are certain things that I think you have to have a time when you unplug your brain. And so for me, that's gardening and also painting. I've done, and I'm an amateur. I can't say I'm a painter. I say I paint. I attempt to paint, but I've done painting with a twist, and I watched like artists paint on YouTube. And I went and bought, with the pandemic, I thought, okay, I am really going to need some brain work here. I went and bought canvases online and paints, and I paint not every weekend, and I paint flowers, or I paint angels, or paint my dog, or whatever it is, or a beach. And sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not great. But once you tell yourself your purpose is to enjoy the process, not the outcome, right? The immersion in that has been so therapeutic for me. So if anyone hasn't found their thing like that, I encourage you to find your thing where you can immerse and detach from all the challenges and things that worry you, and just do that one thing.
I love that. That would energize me. You just sharing that story. I will tell you that one of the things that has really inspired me has been George W. Bush and his Portraits of Courage. Have you seen any of that?
Yes, they're brilliant. Look at someone who was president, and someone like that could rest on their laurels, right? They have checked the box. They have contributed to society. But what does he do? He does that. He advocates for our veterans. He paints paintings, sometimes of immigrants now. I mean, he's such a beautiful person. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. Oh man, I'm gonna have to write that down. Painting. I do not do any painting, but I love how you also said it's about enjoying the process, right? It's that pursuit of that you love. Hey, let me ask you this. What are you most grateful for?
I think right now, from where I sit right now, I'm grateful for so many things: my health, my family, my friends, my company, my job. I mean, there's so much in my world to be grateful for. What I am most grateful for is living in the United States at this moment. When you look back at the last year, we have our struggles, and we are not perfect, and there are many things we have to correct in our country. But if you look at the fact that we developed, and other parties internationally developed, a vaccine in record-breaking time. No one thought that would happen for 2 to 5 years, right? We bring that to market, we manufacture it, we've made it available to all of our residents here in the US. It's readily available now, and we're now shipping it abroad. And with what you see going on in Afghanistan and other countries, and God help the people in Afghanistan, right? The fact that we do not have to worry about persecution in our country in most circumstances, right? As a woman, I don't have to worry that I'm going to be shut in a house, have no voice, can't get an education. I am truly grateful, particularly in light of this last year and what's going on the last few weeks, to be a citizen of the United States.
Yeah, that is so good. I appreciate you sharing that. Hey, let me ask you, I got a couple more questions I want to ask you before we wrap up. And one of the questions I want to ask you is, so, what we've been through for the last 16, 18 months, what are you looking forward to as we close out 2021 and get into 2022?
You mean what I hope and aspire for?
Yes.
I look forward to our new normal, and I don't think any of us know what that is. And I think we would be naive to think that it's going back to what it was. And our new normal might be coexisting with variant after variant. I don't really know what that is, but my greatest hope is that we can all find the best way to operate our businesses and live our lives in a fulfilling way, in a way that contributes to our world as best as we can. So that is my greatest hope, that everyone can find that and can find it safely in a way that they are comfortable with. Yeah,
I'm with you on that. I am with you 100%. Hey, here's my final question, and that one of my favorite questions I like to ask. And then, is Carol 10 years older? She's around the corner knocking at your door, and you're going to answer that door. What is she going to tell you?
She is probably going to tell me, when you are reticent, when you hesitate, go for it. When you're not sure that business case will be successful, don't hold back, go for it. When you're thinking about reaching out to that person and you don't really know them very well, make the effort, reach out, show initiative, because in doing so, it might make a difference and it might help you and some other person. I think that's what, and thinking about this question, I think is already motivating me to do that. But I think older Carol would tell younger Carol that, and I think it's very good advice for me. I'm sure it might be different for others, but that's what I think I would tell myself.
10 years older Carol is a wise one. I love that. Oh my gosh, I admire your leadership so much, and I appreciate you coming onto the show today and just sharing perspective. I am confident that some of the information you shared is going to help someone either validate where they're at. They're going like, hey, I just need to keep going. I need to stay in pursuit, or maybe I need to like stop and make a lane change. So for that, I say thank you. Hey, if somebody wanted to, I don't know, they wanted to connect with you and learn more about maybe something you shared, is there a way for someone that they could connect with you?
Yeah, probably the best way right now, Bruce, is through LinkedIn. Connect me on LinkedIn and message me on LinkedIn, and I will be looking for that. I am on Twitter, but I'm more of a consumer than a contributor. So LinkedIn is kind of my go-to for connecting with folks.
And if you go to connect with Carol on LinkedIn, be sure and put in the notes, you heard her on Life in the Leadership Lane.
Yes.
That makes it so much easier
Yes.
to know what it's all about. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on the show today. Just sharing your, like I said, your wisdom, your perspective. And for that, I say thank you. And most importantly, thank you for your friendship.
Yes, thank you too, Bruce. Thank you I'm honored to be invited. And thank you for everything you're doing, just producing these podcasts. You're helping all of us. So thank you. And I hope to see you. I'll be at the SHRM conference. So I hope to see you in a socially distanced way while we're there.
Yeah, for sure. I cannot wait to share this. I'll talk to you later, Carol.
Okay, bye, Bruce.